Let's continue putting the assembly of the engine together, and let's do that by putting together the piston. Let's pull in first the engine piston part and just drag that into white space and drop it. And next the engine rod. Place that right next door. Next we'll need the piston pin. Pull that in as well. And then we need the part called the rod cap. And we'll just drag that in. Now we're going to assemble this piston subassembly separately off to the side here. Right now, all of these parts are free to move in space. Sometimes that makes it difficult to assemble parts. So temporarily, what I'm going to do is right-click on the piston part and go to Fix. Notice that this puts an F in front of the engine piston, just like the engine block. The engine block got that one automatically by being the first part put into the assembly. Okay, now we can go ahead and start assembling some of these other parts. To put the rod into the piston, I'm going to hold down Alt and drag the center of the rod hole onto the center of the piston hole. You might notice that the sizes of these do not match very well. The piston hole is much bigger than the rod hole. We're going to fix that here in a moment. But first, let's get this rod centered in the piston. So I'm going to take a look at the planes that come down through here. If I expand the engine rod, we look and we find the right plane is the correct plane. And then we expand the engine piston and we find the right plane again is the correct one. So with those two selected, that's Control Select on the second one. We'll click on the Mate tool, make those coincident, and say OK. All right, so now let's go back and fix this problem that we've got with the diameter. If we look at the diameter of this hole, go to Tools Measure. The diameter is 2 inches. If I go to the diameter of this hole, got a diameter of 1 inch. So we want to edit the rod to match the piston. I'll click on the piston, go to Open Part. Let's change the sketch. So we'll go to the first sketch, right-click, and Edit Sketch. If we change this 2-inch diameter to 1 inch, that should do it. And then we can get out of the sketch. Okay, now let's edit the sketch of the Boss Extrude 1. So we'll click on that and Edit Sketch. There are 2 circles with a 2-inch diameter here. Make sure to get the one that does not have the line that goes across it. That line represents a split part. So we'll take this other circle and change that to a 1-inch diameter. And then exit the sketch. Okay, that has worked the way we wanted it to. So now we'll save this with a different name. I'll go to File, Save As, and that's important. Save it as Engine Rod Edit. And then we can flip back to the assembly. We can do that with Control Tab. And we can see that the parts now match. Let's put this pin in place. Hold down Alt, grab the diameter, drag it into place, drop, accept, and then let's mate together the end face and this flat face. Since we've only got a couple of mates left to go, we've already got the mate dialog open, so let's see what we can do to make this as quick as possible. We'll just click on this circular edge and then click on this circular edge. Now they went together as concentric, but they're backwards. So let's flip the alignment for the second part and then say OK. Let's do the same thing over here. Circular edge, right click to accept. Now we need to move this part up so we can see the rest of it. And this is where things get a little bit squirrely because some parts are moving and others aren't. We've got it in a position now where we can see both faces, not very conveniently, but we can see both of them. So let's grab this flat face and one of these flat faces, and accept that. Now rotate this part back up approximately straight up. It really doesn't matter that much at this point. We'll say OK. Now we've got everything that we need from the piston subassembly. And let's take a look at all the parts that make that up. We've got the engine piston, the engine rod, edit, the piston pin, and the rod cap. Let's take all of these parts and make a subassembly in place. So click on the first one, should be the engine piston, and then shift click on the last one, should be the rod cap, and then right click and select Form New Subassembly here. The new subassembly that's created is called a virtual component. It does not exist as a separate file outside of the assembly. So let's go ahead and save the assembly. When we do save the assembly, SOLIDWORKS is also going to ask us to save the virtual component. So let's select Save Externally, and then give this a name by double-clicking here. I'm just going to put the part on my desktop, but you can put it wherever you like. I'll call this the engine piston subassembly, and then say OK. Now we've got a subassembly, which is an external file with all of these components. We can go ahead and start to mate this part into the assembly. Let's get this pre-positioned and then start mating this piston into place. Let's click on the cylindrical face of the piston, cylindrical face of the cylinder, and accept that. Next, we want to select the cylindrical face inside this hole and the cylindrical face on the lobe of the crankshaft. Notice the crankshaft had to move in order to accept that, but also notice that we can't get anything else to move. The rod, in this case, will not move relative to the piston because SOLIDWORKS sees the whole subassembly as a single part. Here's what we need to do. Get out of the mate command, and we need to click on the engine piston subassembly in the feature manager, go to the component properties icon, and in the lower right-hand corner, there's a Solve As box, and you need to select the flexible option. What this does is it allows SOLIDWORKS to solve this subassembly so that it's a flexible subassembly. And now we can rotate the crankshaft, and the rod will rotate with respect to the piston. We'll come back in the next lesson and put the rest of the pistons in the cylinders.